Hey y'all, it is October 31st, and in about an hour and a half, October will be over, which means that Readers Imbibing Peril is in the bag for me for 2020. So I'm here just to tell you a little bit about some of the books that I read for the challenge this year. So Readers Imbibing Peril is, well, I like to call it a genre readathon, because I think about all of the categories that go into it are kind of like the non-literary fiction genres. So mystery, murder, crime, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, pretty much everything except snooty, high fiction. So I've talked about some of these books at length in weekly wrap-ups or in other videos, like in other Tina book videos or something like that. So I will just go, when I get to those, I'll just tell you, and I'll try and remember to put the cards up so that you can check those out if you want to. So there were 9 books. Well, there are 8 books that I definitely think count for Readers Imbibing Peril this year. This is the 15th year they've done it, by the way. And then there's one book, The Saturday Night Ghost Club, that I'm not totally sure. I'm not sure there are ghosts in it or if it's in the imagination of the person. So I'm going to count it for Readers Imbibing Peril. But if you've read it, or if you read it moving forward and you come back and go, you know, I don't think this counts, you're welcome to tell me that I only read 8 books for RIP this year. But I did do my weekly wrap up with that book, Saturday Night Ghost Club, just last week. So I will hopefully remember to link it here, and you can go, or you can just go to my last video and you can see what that one's about. It was really cute, a little bit Stand By Me from Stephen King, if you remember that story. Let's see. The Ballad of Black Tom was a story inspired by H.P. Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos. So 2 weeks ago was my weekly update that featured The Ballad of Black Tom. Would recommend. I am not a Cthulhu mythos person or an H.P. Lovecraft person, so you might actually not like it if you are super into it, or maybe even if you're not, because I don't really know how it relates. I just know that there are some references to the mythos in it, which is actually interesting because it's set before. So it was written after, but it's set before. So that might be worth thinking about. Not by me, but by someone else. Another book actually that I read for RIP this year is Lovecraft Country. So that one's also linked in some ways to the H.P. Lovecraft world. So I did also do a video for that one. I will link it if I remember. I might not. Welcome to look for it if I don't. And that one is, of course, a new show that everybody is kind of loving that I will probably never watch because I rarely watch things that are based on books that I liked. But I did really enjoy it. It's a little, 60s separatist or segregation influenced story that also has magic and stuff in it. And I'm trying to remember if there were gruesome parts. I think there were. There definitely was in The Ballad of Black Tom. So if you're not into horror at all, then skip those 2 books. Double Indemnity is kind of a mystery, but we know what's going on, so it's not a mystery to us. It gives me the vibes of, like, you know those old movies? I assume they're actually movies. I've actually only seen them mostly referenced by other things. So a black and white movie, and there's like the private dick behind the desk and the stained glass window, and maybe it just says like private dick on there. And then she walks in and she's got like the long thing and she's all, something's going on, or I'm trying to figure out what's happening. and she's like total, like the dame character. That's what this story reminds me of. It is a short story. I read it via audiobook, which was awesome. And it's kind of a ride to see what happens, because you think, oh, that dame is bad news. And probably that dame is bad news. And then there's other bad news stuff that happens. So Noelle Gallagher, who is one of my favorite booktubers, recommended that book. I think she read it a month or 2 months ago. And so I read that one. The other book I read on her recommendation was actually a reread and part of RIP as well, which was Pet Sematary by Stephen King, linked hopefully somewhere in this area. And that was really great. It was a reread for me. Stephen King has the like building up to dread thing down. He's the master of verboseness for sure. But lots of characterization, lots of background information. And then it kind of peaks, you know, later, because we've got all this sort of like building, peak, and then it's almost over pretty quickly by the time you get to the end. All of his books are so long. I read the first third of The Stand earlier this year and was like, I'm just not into this. I feel done with this. And so I DNF'd it earlier this year. The Horror Store. So that's another kind of short story. Read it via audiobook. It's about a haunted IKEA knockoff. And I would definitely recommend it. And I will link that review above. The Killing Moon was a book and a tea post, I believe. And I read that as a buddy read with Kat from Why Read, who is a bookstagrammer. And so we did 2 discussions, the first 10 chapters, and then the rest of the book. So I think we're going to read the second one. So this is an N.K. Jemisin duology. So The Killing Moon is the first one. And it's about a world where there are gatherers who gather pieces of your soul as you're being put to rest. And those pieces of your soul can help other people. And it turns out that the government is not good. And so, revolution. The Haunting of Tramcar015. You know, I wonder if I did a video for all of these, and maybe the reason why I did that was because they were all RIP books. That is possible, because I think I talked about this one too. This one is about the haunting of a tram car in ancient Cairo, but their technology is based on genies, or the jinn, the power of the jinn. And there's a tram car that has been acting funny and throwing people off of it and stuff. And there's an agency of workers, kind of like Men in Black, who go in and investigate these hauntings and all of this stuff. But it's a world where there are a lot of different kinds of beings, like jinns, for example. So I would say that of the 9 books that I read for this challenge, The Haunting of Tramcar015 is probably one of my favorite ones. And it's a little bit of a buddy cop thing happening with this older guy who works at this agency and this new younger guy partner who is been paired with him. And the last one, which I talked about a couple of weeks ago as a problematic book, is All of Us with Wings. I liked the story and the idea of the book. The primary romantic relationship in the book is between a traumatized 17-year-old girl and her 29-year-old boss. So if you read a lot of books, I would still recommend the book. I liked it. If you don't read a lot of books, then I wouldn't recommend that you use your precious reading time for something that I think is problematic. But it's up to you, of course, because you get to read whatever you want to. So those are the 9 books I read for RIP. I went through them really fast because this has been a collection of references to previous videos over the last 2 months that I've done in service, I guess, of Readers Imbibing Peril 2020, which was the 15th year of the reading challenge. I'll see you on the next one.